Hello and welcome to this tutorial. My name is Mr. Popo and we are Popo, and today I'm going to be helping you to create this inside of After Effects. Let's go. The first thing that we need to talk about is how everything needs to be organized so that we don't lose track of what we're doing and things doesn't get way too overwhelmed that we completely forget what is what is where, and are we creating something in a duplicate. So you'll see here that this was my main project file, and now I did not put this just for the sake of this tutorial. This is something that I've been doing throughout all my tutorials, throughout all my projects. I have a main comps. This is where the most important scenes are, so I don't do things like final of the other final that will be one day a final. What I do is I have a CC. This is where I put everything. This is where I put color correction and audio, and then I have the scenes, and inside the scenes I will have probably pre-comps that I'll be using later on in different pre-comps. I have a main folder with my main comps that are colored, so I only need to see the color to know what comp is what, so I don't need to keep on reading. And you can do that by just going to your composition and clicking here and choosing a color. So I'll choose red always for the final CC color correction, and purple for the main scenes or the main comps. And then I have another folder which I call the pre-comp. This is where I put things that I'll be using as footages and stuff like that. And of course I have a folder for footages. This is if I import audios or if I import music and stuff like that. And as you can see here, I had to import the original video by Ordinary Folks to get the audio here and to dissect it and make a tutorial out of it. So thank you, Ordinary Folks. Now that we have the project structure out of the way, let's talk about how the scenes are going to be composed. So this is going to be composed of 3 scenes. We're going to have the first scene, which has this big blob and the circle going in, and then we're going to have a hard cut to the second scene, which has this rotation with fade. And then we have the last scene, and this will actually transit to loop everything together to the first scene. So 3 scenes, and we're gonna have fun with each and every one of them. All right, let's start with the first scene. So I'm gonna go and create a new composition, Control and Command N, or composition, new composition. New composition, I'm gonna call this scene 1, and I'm gonna make sure that this is a tutorial scene. I'm gonna take it and put it in the main comp, because this is gonna be the main one that will contain all the pre-comps that we're gonna create. Now, before I continue, I need to explain to you something that I use heavily, and that is called the guide layers. So for example, here you see that I have a background here, but when you go inside the scene, there is no background. Alright, and you'll be wondering, then how did I design everything? It's because I had a background, but then it's just a guide layer, it's not there. So what is a guide layer? Let's create a new composition. Let's call this CC tutorial, just for the sake of understanding what's going on here. Right, I'm gonna make sure that this is red. This is the CC tutorial, and this is the scene 1 tutorial. So I'm gonna go here and create a new BG with this kind of color. I'm gonna put it here. So if I go to CC tutorial and drop in the scene 1, I'll have the scene 1 with the background. But then if I go inside here and take this and put it as a guide layer, so right click, guide layer, and I go back to my CC, I don't see the BG anymore. And that is because right now After Effects take this as only visible in this composition. So you can't render it and you can't see it in any other composition. Let's look to another example just to make sure that we really understand this. So I'm gonna make a new color that doesn't really matter. Alright, so we have red here, so if I go back, I'll see it. But then if I create a new shape layer and right click and I put a guide layer and I go out, I'll see this, but I won't be able to see this. So this is how you can keep on references. So the reason I did this is because later on some scenes, if I scale down and then I have this composition in, I'll be able to see the background scaling down, and I don't want that. I just want this just so that I can understand what I'm creating, but I don't want to see it outside. I want to have just one constant background outside, and that is why I put this as a guide layer here. But then when I go here, I have the main background here, but the one inside of here is just a guide layer. Alright, so let's create our main sphere, or what I call the main blob. This is what we're gonna try to create now. So what I'm gonna do is create a new composition. I'm gonna call this main blob tutorial. And I'm gonna take this and put it right into pre-comp. Now that we have that, I'm just gonna go and create a circle like this. And I'm going to create another circle. So basically, I'll create a bunch of circles in this composition. Okay, and then I'm going to go and create my last shape, which is going to be something like this. Alright, and this one doesn't really have to be perfect. I could just go and start to distort it like this. Alright, so what are we using all this? It's because we're gonna go and drop this one here to be our main blob. Believe it or not, this is what we're gonna try to create. So how are we gonna get there? The first thing that I'm gonna start doing is I need to first create and mask the circle. I could go and create a mask like this. But if later on I create new elements and I need them to be inside here, it's going to be pretty difficult. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to create a shape. It doesn't matter what color. I'm going to create a shape around here. So this is the size of my mask. And I'm going to call this main mask. And the way I'm going to use this shape on this composition is using an alpha matte, and you can find this option here if you don't have it by default on. So once you click on here, you'll have this menu here, and you can go and choose alpha matte. So right now, if I move this or change this or animate this or do whatever with this, this will be affected as well. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, as a mask. Now I'm gonna go inside and I'm gonna try to fix this somewhere here, here. Another thing I can see is that it's pretty empty here, so I'm gonna go and create a new layer, solid, and I'm gonna call this background with it doesn't matter what color. I'm gonna go and use an effect called gradient ramp and put it there. Gradient ramp is just a gradient effect that you can control using these points right here, or you can use these controllers here. So I'm gonna go something like that, and I'm gonna go and change the values here to get a little bit closer to the colors of these guys here. All right, now that we have the color, they're gonna mix really well inside. So now that we masked everything together, we're gonna start and creating the look that we wanted. So I'm gonna use a bunch of effects that are pretty basic. The first thing, I'm gonna use a fast box blur to get that glassy blur kind of effect. I'm just gonna increase this just a bit. Let's just say it's around here. The next thing that I want to do is create a turbulent. This effect gives me like a liquid kind of feel, as you can see here. So if I play with this a little bit more, you can see that it kind of liquefies things together. So I'm just gonna go and play with this a bit. I'm just gonna go and add another one just to make sure that it adds a little bit more details into my main liquid, and it doesn't make it look like, oh, it's just a liquid effect applied on. Now that that is done, I could actually make this a little bit darker. So I'm gonna go and use a curve and just make this a little bit darker, because I'm just trying to get this dark color on this one. Yeah, it's just something around that. Now that we have this, we can start and we can animate everything together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new null object, and I'm going to go and change the anchor point to 50-50 so that it's right in the center. I'm gonna take everything and I'm gonna parent them to this null. And I could go and animate this null like this. Or what I could do so that this does not get destroyed later on, if I have even a bigger composition or smaller composition, what I would do then is just create a expression here, and by alt clicking here, alt, and then I click here, or option, and then you click there, and I put time multiply 30. So what's gonna happen is for every second that passes by, this is gonna rotate around 30 degrees. If I increase this more, this will obviously rotate more in a certain second. Cool. All right, now let's look at what's going on here. So if we don't apply our turbulence, this is how it's gonna look like. But now that we have our turbulence in, it's more organic like. But that's not enough. What we're gonna do is we're gonna try and add effects to these themselves. We have to make them move so that it doesn't look like it's just a sphere rotating around. So I'm gonna go inside, bring the position of every single one of them, but I'll focus on this one. Let's just call it the purple. I'm gonna take this and alt click and add a simple expression which randomizes the movement of my shape layer or my layer. I'm gonna say just once in 2 seconds, just move it maximum between 1 and 50. So now, as you can see, this blob is gonna be moving a little bit. You see, it's not just rotating, it's actually moving a bit. So I'm just gonna go literally copy this and apply it to every single thing. All right, now everything is moving together. As you can see, it's way better than it's just standing here. I have a little problem with this because it goes away from that. So I'm just gonna go put it here. Or what I could go and do is create a turbulent displace effect on this very purple one. And I'm just gonna go to something like maybe like that, so that it just does look like them. All right. Perfect. I feel like this is a little bit too sharp, so I'm just gonna go into my mask and I'm gonna apply a small Gaussian blur, as you can see here. So I'm just gonna apply like 4, just a little bit, because I don't want it to be super sharp like that. All right. Now that we have this, what we could do next is how to animate this. So in the next tutorial, we're gonna learn how to create this 2 love circles and animate the whole thing in, and also add this outer shell. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. And if you enjoy this, hit up that like button to help me get this algorithm thing going on. My name is Mr. Popo, and we are Popo. I'll see you on the next part.